When people ask me how I turned so white at such a young age, I think when I was around 42, I was already turning white. My answer to them is simple: experience. It's all life's experiences that made me white like this. Now, somebody asked me on TikTok the other day that this advice you're giving, did it work for you? And my answer was very simple. It's this: that I never ever advise anybody on anything except from personal experience. It's always from my own personal experience. So it goes without saying that if I give you some advice, it comes from reflecting on my own experience and not something that I read somewhere, nothing from theory. And if I do give outside advice, it's from people who had the experience, who related to me personally their experiences. Like my dad, for example, there's a lot of things that I learned from him, or my grandfather. There are a lot of things that I learned from him. And those are my experiences that I learned from them. Now, one of my greatest experiences in my adult life was when I decided to make a change in my life. And that was what I spoke about in the previous episode. So if you heard the previous episode, then you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you didn't, please go and check it out. It's on my channel. It's about my realizing that I'm not happy with certain aspects of my life and I need to make a change. And at that point, I was in a very comfortable job. I was working out in Johannesburg, Sandton no less, had a good job, good people I was working with, lovely company. Go to work, do my stuff, come home every day, end of the month, get my salary. Doing Java development, I loved every moment of it. But I knew that deep down inside, I wasn't happy and I needed to make a change. Otherwise, I wouldn't have control of my life. My life would become like one of those water slides you go through where you just hop on and you can't make any decisions about where you want to go. You just have to follow the slide. You can't stop at any point. You can't slow down. You just go with the flow. Literally, you go with the flow. And I didn't want that for my life. I knew deep down inside that I wanted a few things. I wanted to be close to my parents who were back in Durban. I wanted a life where there wasn't the hustle and bustle of traveling in the city. I wanted a life where there was always nature around me, a peaceful life. I wanted a life where I would spend a lot of time with my boys. And that was something at that point which seemed impossible for me. But I needed to do it. And I knew that if I didn't make a change soon, then with each passing day and month and year, it's just going to get harder and harder to make that change. And I asked myself, okay, this change is scary, very scary. But what is the alternative? Is the change scarier, or is remaining in the situation that I'm in scarier? Which is scary? And I had to weigh that out. And I realized that as scary as the change was, it was more scary to remain in a life where I enjoyed some parts of it, but by and large, I wasn't really happy. And so I decided that I need to make that change. Now, we all have to ask ourselves that question at some point. That do I leave things as they are, or do I make a change? And especially in this day and age we're living in, it was simpler back then. When I say back then, it was, not even that long ago. It was, like 12 years ago. But so much has changed. So much has changed with technology and AI, careers, economics. COVID happened in between. And our world was shaken up over and over again. Our job situation, our businesses were shaken up over and over again. And that is lesson enough that change is inevitable. And you have the choice. Either change now or be miserable for the rest of your life. It's a simple choice. And I think any normal, sane human being will realize that I have to make the change. But I do understand that change is scary. And through this video, I want to relate to you and I want to reassure you that change does not have to be as scary. In fact, in my own experience, the thought of change is actually much scarier than the change itself. Trust me. It seems so scary, but once you're in it, it's quite exhilarating, just like the water slides. Now, I got a friend a colleague actually, who had a very nice way. Now, you might agree with this or not, but he had a very nice way of determining whether he needs to change in his life or not. And he called that the Sunday evening litmus test. And what this meant was that when Sunday evening came about, he would reflect on his own feelings and think about how he's feeling about tomorrow, about Monday morning. And if he felt sad that the weekend is over, if he felt that cringy feeling that, gosh, I have to go back to work, I have to go back to that place with those people, I wish this weekend would never end. If he had that feeling, he knew that the job he was in is no good for him and it was time for a change. And on the contrary, if he had this feeling in his tummy, and fortunately that's the feeling he had at the place we worked together, when he had this feeling that, hey, I'm excited, I'm looking forward to this project we're working with, I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues, I'm looking forward to basically generally just getting back to work and getting to it. It gives me a sense of fulfillment. If you have that feeling, then you're good for now. So that's the Sunday evening litmus test. You need to gauge what aspects of your life you are not happy with, that you would like to change, and you need to make that change. Now, one of the books that helped me to make a change in my life was a very simple and an easy book. It's a short book called Who Moved My Cheese, written by Spencer Johnson. I strongly recommend that everybody reads this book. It's a simple, easy book to read. It's down to earth, but the message in the book and the lessons you learn are life-changing. So the book revolves around 4 characters, 2 mice and 2 little people. Now, they all live in a maze, in a very complex maze. And every day they go out looking for cheese. And one day they found cheese at a point. And so they ate to their heart's content and they returned home. The next day they came back and ate and returned home, and then went back and returned home. But the one thing they didn't realize was that every day the amount of cheese that was there was getting less and less and less. But they were so happy and content with their lives that they blocked it out. They blocked out this very obvious observation that this cheese is getting less, that change is dawning on them. And so one day they pitched up there and there was no more cheese. Now what do? Now the 2 mice, they were called, I think, Sniff and Scurry. Sniff and Scurry just followed their instincts. They didn't use their heads. They just used their instincts. And what they did, they went away. They went to another point. They went deeper and deeper into the maze looking for more cheese. But him and Haw, using their brains, just like us human beings generally tend to do, started to think about it. And naturally, just like you and I, started to overthink the whole situation. And then they started to, him and Haw, they started to complain and whine and talk about the injustice of it all and how terrible the situation was and how scary everything was and how they've been deprived of everything. Typical, right? Sounds just like us. And so for days and days they kept on returning, hoping that there'd be cheese, but there was no cheese. Just like us, we keep doing the same things hoping for a change. But sometimes we have to realize that change is just not going to happen. It's like Einstein said, right? That insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's what him and Haw were doing. So at one stage, one of the 2 characters, I think it was him said to Haw that, look, the mice are gone. Perhaps we need to change now. Perhaps we need to go to another point and look for cheese somewhere else. And so we went a little further into the maze, and he found little fragments of cheese, nothing really serious, but he found a little bit of cheese, and he was happy. So he came back for his friend, and he said to her, look, I found some cheese deeper in the maze. Why don't you come with me? So Haw was, no ways. I'm not changing. This is too scary. It's terrible. I'm not going to make this change here. That depths of the maze is a scary place. And so him decided that I can't let my friend hold me back. For days and days he held me back. It's because of him that I didn't make this move. And so he decided to be brave, chest out, go deep into the maze. By that point he didn't know where the mice were. And so he went deeper and deeper and deeper into the maze until he found a massive stash of cheese, which the mice had already found on almost day one because they went deeper into the maze. And not just the same cheese, but he found varieties of cheese, and he was happy and content. And then he started to think about his friend who was still languishing in that place, still looking for cheese, still doing the same things over and over again, getting weaker and thinner as time went and dying basically of starvation. Now, I love that book. I love that book because it's so relatable, and it's funny in a way, but it makes us laugh at ourselves. It makes us laugh at how we tend to behave. It's almost programmed into us. No matter who you are, what race or culture or creed you come from, we are all almost identical in that sense. When we are faced with change, we absolutely hate it. And we always start with complaining and denial. And then, just like him, at some point we find ourselves forced to change, but sometimes it's too late. And in some cases, there is not even change. So what did I learn from this book? I'll tell you what I learned, right? There are four lessons. First one is change is inevitable. Do not get comfortable in your comfort zone. Whether you are top of your game in your profession or you have your own business, remember, change is going to happen. The second thing is adaptability is crucial in your life. You just have to be adaptable, and that is the superpower for today and for the future. In this world of AI, in this world of technology that's rapidly changing, the superpower of human beings is going to be adaptability and resilience. A couple of episodes ago, I spoke about resilience. That is the superpower that we all need. The next one is let go of that fear of change. That fear is what's holding us back. And trust me, like in most cases, the fear is irrational. It's not real. The idea of change, the fear of change is much worse than the change itself. Trust me, I've been there. I'm talking about my own journey here. I'm not making any of this up. It was a terrible thing. It was the most scary thing to think about this change. But, like I said, once I embarked on that change, then things started to open up and things became easier and easier. So overcome that fear. That fear is what is holding you back. It reminds me of this meme that I saw on the internet of this kid who is in the water and he's screaming. They put him in the water and he's screaming hysterically because he's so terrified of the water. And the swimming instructor, all she did was ask him to stand up. And he stood up and the water was up to his knees, but he was on his back and he was terrified. Now we are like that quite a bit. And finally, the thing I learned from this is stop talking and take action. Just take action. Just do something. Take action. Take the first step. And when you take that first step, you'll see that the second and the third steps become apparent by themselves. Rather than just sitting around and thinking and overthinking and whining and complaining, just take that first step. I promise you that first step will be the wisest decision you made, because first and foremost, like I said, it'll open up the way to the second step, but more important than that, it empowers you. It empowers you by giving you a very clear message, giving yourself a very clear message that, hey, I took that first step and it wasn't scary. And if I took the first, then I'm sure I can take the second. So just put your foot in the water. Stop being afraid. Now, you might be wondering, okay, I realize that I need to change. I realize that I want to take control of my life. I want to craft my life to what I want it to be because it's less than ideal right now. I'm unhappy. I'm not in a place that I would like to be. What do? This guy Bilal is talking about all these things about change, but how do I actually go about taking these steps? How do I go about making this change? Now this is where I'm going to share with you my 4-step plan for implementing change in your life. The first step, first and foremost, is know thyself. I always say this, and I might sound like a broken record on my TikToks, even on this podcast. If you heard some of my earlier episodes, I spoke about knowing thyself. Now, why is this so important? It's important because when you know yourself, then you know what you love and what you hate, what you like and what you dislike, what you prefer and what you don't, what is good for you and what is not. So that self-awareness is the most important starting point. When you are standing on that firm foundation of self-awareness, now you can easily see who you are, what your passions are, what you prefer, what you like. And it helps in every aspect of life, right? Not just in terms of your career and terms of your business, but also in your relationships, in the type of clothes you wear, the type of vehicle you purchase, the type of home you buy. It's all got to do with self-awareness. Pretty much every decision that you're going to make in your life, whether they are big decisions or small decisions, starts from self-awareness, starts from asking yourself the question, is this good for me or not? Or if I'm presented with a few options, which option is most congruent to my personality, most congruent to my personal preferences? So the self-awareness, the self-knowledge, it's like the philosophers used to say, know thyself. The next thing is, once you are on that firm grounding of knowing thyself, the next thing you do is research. So see what I'm saying? Starts internally and then it goes external. Don't start external. Start inside and then go outwards. Now you start doing research. Now you start filling your head with knowledge about what is the best path for you based on the type of person that you are. Look, in my situation, it was this. I loved what I was doing in Johannesburg. I was a Java developer. It was my lifelong dream to become a software developer. But unfortunately, that dream wasn't perfect. And there was always this deep sense of unhappiness in me. And when I finally discovered, when I did some self-reflection, and I'll talk about that a bit later, I realized that these are the things that I don't like. As much as that's where the opportunities are, that's where the money is, that's where the career growth is. But for me, looking at my personality type, I was just happy and content living a simple life in nature with my kids around me and spending as much time as possible with them. And that was a very strong part of my personality. And so there was this internal conflict, this constant internal conflict, career growth, wealth, climbing the ladder versus true happiness, contentment, and joy. But I digress. So you do the research, you get to know who you are, and you find out, now based on who I am, what is the best career path for me? And there's never been a better time than now to do this research. But I'll come back to that. So now you've done internal reflection, you've filled your head, you've got the research, you've got feedback from those around you. The next thing is you make your decision and you ask yourself, right, decision is made. What knowledge and skills do I need to grow into that position, to make that transition? So that's where the 4th point comes in, upskilling yourself. So you upskill yourself and you upgrade yourself so that you can prepare yourself for that brave new life that you are crafting for yourself. Beautiful, isn't it? I love the word crafting. You're crafting that life for yourself, which means that it's not instant and it's not something that is like a factory produced item. Something that is crafted is unique to you. It's something that takes time. It's shaped over time, carving out something out of a piece of wood, chipping away slowly, 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 and slowly seeing this thing take shape. It's the most beautiful thing. And it also takes a lot of patience. None of this happens overnight, by the way. So now you've done the self-reflection, you've been through the process of doing the research, you've educated yourself, you've upskilled yourself. What's the fourth thing? The fourth thing is networking. This is where you go out to third parties and you start expanding your network. And it's through that network that you will be able to now unlock opportunities. Because very seldom can you ever open up an opportunity on your own. Your net worth is your network. In other words, or the other way around, I don't know how it goes, but you know what I'm trying to say. The old saying says that you can increase your net worth, how much of money you are worth, by expanding your network into the right people. Now, when I speak about getting to know oneself, a lot of people become a bit confused. They become stuck. And repeatedly I get the question, whether I speak at schools or whether I speak online, on TikTok, or on YouTube, the same question keeps coming up. How do I find myself? How do I get to know yourself? Now let me give you an easy formula. That easy formula is go away from everybody, find yourself maybe in nature, put your devices away, separate yourself from all of the troubles of this world, from all of the attractions and distractions of this world, and just have an internal conversation with yourself. But make sure it's internal, right? Make sure it's not external, because you don't want to be passing somebody and they catch you talking to yourself. Now, when I was about to make that decision about my change that I wanted in my life, it was difficult because I'm a person who has a number of different skills and a number of different passions. And so I was lost in the middle of that. And even if you take one of my passions, for example, coding, there's literally dozens of things that you can do with coding alone. So it was a difficult decision and I just couldn't seem to come up with something. So what I did was I took my family and we decided to go to the Drakensberg, to a beautiful resort in the Drakensberg, and to spend a long weekend there. And that's where I would allow them to go and do their stuff and do their trails and boat rides and whatever. And I would spend time alone, just self-reflecting and getting to know myself and trying to come up with the answer. And I still remember so vividly, there was a lake and there were benches, and I recall sitting on a bench for hours in front of that lake and trying to figure out what exactly I'm going to do with my life. Which of my passions am I going to put into play? And what kind of work am I going to set out for myself? What kind of business? Is it going to be a job that allows remote work, or is it going to be a business? If it's a business, what type of business? So I recall asking myself all of those questions. And I arrived at something. In that weekend, I arrived at an answer. After all the thinking and overthinking, I arrived at an answer. And the moment I went back home, we started to implement that. But guess what? That wasn't the right answer. A year down the line, after trying to get that going, I realized that maybe this wasn't the best option. And so I had to make another decision now. And so I pivoted and I went to the next option. Now, many of you might think, well, that was terrible. It was a year wasted. My answer was no, the year was not wasted. And this is where most people get it wrong. The time that I spent working on my first project which didn't succeed was time that I spent learning what would work and what didn't work and what would not work. And that's what gave me the courage to now pivot and go into my next project. And not just that, but most of the skills that I learned during that first year were transferable. So I transferred it to my second project. So you could say it was a year of learning. Yes, it was not the best business decision that I made, but from that point, when I pivoted, it became the best decision that I made. And that decision that I made was IT Varsity. And up till today, I'm very happy with that decision. But if it wasn't for that 1 year where I learned those skills about what works and what doesn't work, IT Varsity would probably not be what it is today. So don't be afraid of making a mistake. That's the other thing that holds people back. We think to ourselves, well, what if I make a mistake? Well, go and make a mistake. Make 100 mistakes, because those mistakes are what is building up your wisdom. It's what is giving you the sense of what works and what doesn't work. A mistake, remember, listen to me very carefully. A mistake is not failure. I hate the word fail. That's a word that's, a remnant of the terror we faced in school, when people would threaten you with failing, with being a total waste in life. But it's not that. In business, in the real world, failure means try again. It means I made a mistake, I made a decision that wasn't optimal, not even a mistake. I made a suboptimal decision. Now it's time to correct certain parameters and move forward. That is the mental attitude that each one of us needs to adopt. And when we do that, then we start making all the right decisions. And when I adopted that mentality, up till today, every day we make mistakes. Every single time we try something new, it goes off track. And we almost expect it to go off track. We prepare for it to be perfect, but it almost always goes off track, and that is a learning experience. So getting to know yourself and getting to be comfortable with who you are as a person, like I say, is the most important thing. So my thing was to separate from everybody and to go out into nature, into the Drakensberg mountain, and do some meditation and pondering. But you can go anywhere. Take a walk in a park, take a walk in the garden, take a walk on the beach, and take a pencil and paper and just write. Just write, write about what your thoughts are at that moment. And through those writings, you will get to know yourself. And that's why I recommend to people, especially young people, just keep a journal. Every day, just write your thoughts and feelings down. One day when you need that self-knowledge, you can always go back to that journal. Now you're not trying to cram all your thinking into a day or two or a couple of weeks. Now you've got months and months, if not years, of your journals to go back to and to meditate and ponder on. And in there, more likely than not, your answer will be there. The person who you are, the life that you want, the preferences, your strengths, your weaknesses will all be glaring at you from that journal. Now, when I started my business, the one message that I took very strongly from my mentors and from whatever I read was network, network, network. There's nothing better than networks. And I'll give you an example, right, of how your networks can really completely transform your life. So it happened on one occasion that I needed to fit new tires in my car. And so I drove it into the tire shop, and they said, well, this will take about 2 hours because we are quite busy. And so rather than just sitting there and waiting, I went to a nearby restaurant, my wife and I, and we sat there sipping coffee. And while I was drinking coffee, I decided to catch up on some news. And I read this article. About a very interesting youth empowerment project that took place in somewhere in Johannesburg. And the head of that project was a person, and the person was mentioned in that article. And I thought, wow, I like what she's doing and I'd love to be a part of this. Let me see what I can do about it. And so I looked at that name and then I went on LinkedIn and I searched for the name and I found her. On LinkedIn, I found a profile and I sent a connection request with a message that I read this article about this youth empowerment project you did, and I was very impressed, and I'd love some of your time just to speak about this project and to explore some opportunities for us to work together. That was a long shot. That was a long shot that this person would ever respond to me. But she did. She did respond. She messaged me back after a few days. She said, look, I'm very busy. I'm about to go on an overseas trip, but tomorrow I can give you 20 minutes of my time. It's a public holiday. I know if you're not averse to having a meeting on a public holiday, let's talk. I says, fine, here's my number. You can call me. So she called me on that day. And she said, look, like I said, I got 15 to 20 minutes. I'm very busy. I'm packing. Go. What's your pitch? And I remember speaking like a racehorse commentator, trying to get my pitch about who we are as IT Varsity and how I envision us working together with them. By the end of the call, she said, look, I think there is something here. I think we can work together. So anyway, she went, did her trip and came back. We reached out. I went up to Johannesburg. We met. And I promise you, through that relationship that I established, we brought in millions of rands worth of deals into the business. And we impacted not hundreds, but thousands of lives. Thousands of young people were impacted. And that was some of the most fun projects that we ever did, some of the most enjoyable projects that we ever did in partnership with this organization. It was incredible. It was really, truly incredible. Just, if you look at that journey, just from one newspaper article to doing such great work with this person and with this organization, it was incredible. Now, that's a practice that I've kept. And every opportunity that I find to network with people, with interesting people, with people that I can benefit from, people that I can learn something from, or people that we can find some mutual benefit where we can do business together, I seize the opportunity. When there's an opportunity to go to a function or to an expo or to a business meeting where you could possibly network with great people, be there. Go there, show your face, make sure you are seen, make sure you get to know people, make sure you swap business cards with them. And when you are done with that, when you leave that place, make sure you follow up. Make sure you follow up by saying, look, I don't know if you remember me, but we met at a certain meeting. Thank you so much for your business card. I'd love to have a meeting with you, a virtual meeting. Can you give me 30 minutes of your time? So this is what you do. Every opportunity, both online and in the real world, go and network with people and have your business cards ready. Give your business card, take their business card, and always follow up. And if possible, keep a customer relationship management system, maybe just an Excel spreadsheet where you list down all these people that you met, where you met them, and a little story next to that, and you'll see that your network will grow and grow and grow. You'll see that spreadsheet will grow and grow and grow. And I promise you that network is what is going to help you to achieve your dreams in some way or the other, either through direct deals or through advice or through their experience. In some way or the other, that network is going to help you. Now, earlier on, I spoke about educating yourself, training yourself, upskilling yourself. And that's the beauty of being a human being, that we are given this mental capacity to change. You know, I often, to give you a proper understanding of that, I use the analogy of a cell phone. A cell phone or a computer are so capable because of their ability to load new software. I mean, the same computer can at one time be your tool for accounting in your business, or your tool for editing videos, or graphic design, or entertaining yourself, or playing video games, or doing coding. There's literally tens of thousands of things you can do with that same computer. Why? Because of its ability to load new software, and each new software that it loads gives it new capabilities. Now, as a human being, you can load software also that gives you completely new capabilities. And the software I'm talking about is, you guessed it, training, knowledge, courses, books, learning. Do you realize that every time you learn something, you are actually upgrading yourself? Do you realize that every time you learn a new skill, you are opening up new opportunities for yourself? Let me give you an example. When I was teaching at a school, I had almost zero need for Excel. And this was many, many years ago. I had no need to learn Excel. But I did notice something. I noticed that the teachers were manually doing their calculations of student marks and putting those into the reports. And it was a very error-prone process. And if you made an error on one report, there's a good chance that you had to trash every single report and start all over again. So a teacher would be doing reports for, 40 students, and then she made a mistake on a median. Now, reports are legal documents, right? And you cannot use Tipex and make a correction. So what she had to do, obviously trash all the reports, start again, if there was a mistake in there. And so I decided, let's try and do something about this. So long story short, I found that the best solution would be to develop a system in Excel where the teachers would be able to enter the students' marks, and that would give them it'll do all the calculations for the teachers and give them exactly the numbers that they needed. So for example, they would put in the students' raw mark, maybe 20 out of 25. And what the system would do that I created, it would convert that into a percent, and then it would take all the percentages and calculate the median, average, whatever the teacher wanted to, do the totals, take those and present the teacher with a complete report. It took me a while, and it was in my own time that I did it in the evenings. But in doing so, just in creating that one solution, I became pretty proficient at Excel. But that was that. I never needed to use Excel after that, except to maintain that system. And I subsequently left that school, went off to Johannesburg, started working as a software engineer out there. And years later, when I was back in Durban, I was approached by the Durban University of Technology. And they said, look, we need somebody who is very proficient with Excel to do some training for us. And it was a very lucrative contract. And that was the time I had just restarted my business in Durban, and we needed that income. And so I said, well, I can do this. I can teach Excel to whoever you wanted to teach. And so using my knowledge of Excel, I began lecturing there. And I had a foot in the door with the Durban University of Technology, such a prestigious university. And it turned out it wasn't just a once-off. There were dozens and dozens of jobs I did for them, dozens of contracts, and not just in Durban, but all over the country. And it became a very lucrative deal. And that was beautiful, because that was knowledge that I just learned to fulfill the one objective, which was to help the teachers. Not thinking at that point that I would use this knowledge to earn an income. But that knowledge became useful, and I made a lot of money through that knowledge that I gained of Excel by lecturing. And then from the DUT, from the Durban University of Technology, I started getting other contracts out of the DUT, because my expertise and my ability to teach the software, the Excel program well, it started to spread. So other companies started to call me in, invite me to do training. And so that became a very lucrative part of my business. I stopped doing that subsequently because as IT Varsity got more busy with the online training and things, I didn't have sufficient time. But it was fun. Just going and teaching people Excel, jet setting, traveling all over the country, meeting new people, training them in Excel, getting their feedback, looking at them, progressing, getting the feedback afterwards. Sometimes weeks later, they would email me and tell me how much they benefited from it. It was incredible. It was truly incredible. It was a very enjoyable few years in my life that I did that. Now, I just want to come back to what I said earlier. I told you that change is scary. Change is always going to terrify you. But you have to weigh out whether the change is scarier or being left high and dry like a beached whale is scarier. Today you are comfortable in your business, your job, you're doing well, you top of your game. Tomorrow something changes and everything is gone. Now you can either be reactive to that or you can be proactive. And a proactive strategy is this, that you start putting your eggs in different baskets. Yes, you are a professional. Yes, you are top of your game. For example, you are a data scientist and you're doing well. Start expanding your skill sets. Start learning new courses, start doing courses and learning new knowledge and skills that are somewhat related to your field, but also those that are not related to your field. In other words, what I'm saying is expand your horizons. By expanding your horizons, by expanding your knowledge, you are expanding your opportunities and you're making yourself less fragile. So if, God forbid, you lose your job or your business takes a downturn, you got other tricks up your sleeve. You got other tools in your repertoire that you can use to grow, to go back, get back on your feet, to earn an income, to rectify your business. And that is what is going to keep you floating. Let's say you are in a job and AI comes into your business and suddenly you find yourself out of a job, which is, and I don't mean to be a scaremonger, but it's likely these days with the rapid pace of change of technology. But as long as you have the ability to change, you are resilient, you will not just survive, but you will thrive. With those few words, I thank you for listening and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much.